I worked as the overnight pharmacist at a 24-hour pharmacy inside a big box store for a little over a year, back when I was still building hours toward a different position. Overnight pharmacy work is its own strange world. The rest of the store goes fully dark except for the pharmacy counter and a skeleton crew of maybe 2 or 3 overnight stalkers somewhere in the aisles, and you're technically alone back there behind the counter for most of the shift, filling prescriptions for the handful of people who come in at odd hours: insomniacs, shift workers, people picking up medication for a sick kid at 3 in the morning. Mostly quiet, mostly forgettable work, except for the customer I want to tell you about. He started coming in maybe 2 months into my time there, always between 2 and 3 a.m., always alone, always asking about the same prescription, one that, according to our system, had already been picked up earlier that same day by the same patient. Every single time, I'd pull up the account, see it marked as filled and collected hours earlier, and every single time, the man standing in front of me would insist, calmly, politely, that he hadn't picked anything up yet, that this was his first time coming in that day. The first few times I chalked it up to confusion, maybe an elderly relative picking up on someone's behalf without realizing someone else in the household had already gotten it earlier that day. That kind of mix-up happens more than you'd think. I'd explain the system showed it as collected, he'd apologize for the mistake, and leave without any argument, never upset, always polite, which in hindsight was part of what made it strange, because most people get at least a little frustrated by that kind of mix-up, and he never did, not once. It started happening more frequently, sometimes twice in the same week, always that same prescription, always already marked as picked up according to our system, always him insisting it was his first visit that day. I started actually checking the security footage after the 3rd or 4th time it happened, mostly out of professional caution, wanting to make sure I wasn't accidentally letting the same medication go out twice to someone, which would have been a real compliance issue for me. The footage showed him picking it up both times. Same man, same clothes, same unhurried, polite demeanor, at 2 clearly different timestamps hours apart, both on camera, both real, undeniable footage of the same physical person at the counter twice in one day, with absolutely no acknowledgement from him, either time, that he'd already been there. I brought it up to my supervising pharmacist during a shift overlap, mostly looking for advice on how to handle a customer who might genuinely not remember visiting, wondering if there was some kind of cognitive issue I should be sensitive to. She got quiet in a way that made me nervous, and told me she remembered that exact patient from years earlier, when she'd worked the overnight shift herself before moving to days, and that as far as she knew, this had been going on with him for at least 6 or 7 years. Always the same prescription, always overnight, always with no memory of having already come in. I asked what the prescription was actually for, thinking maybe that would explain something about a memory condition. She told me, and it wasn't anything related to memory or cognition at all. It was a fairly standard heart medication. Nothing about it should have caused any kind of confusion or blackout. I did some digging in the system myself after that conversation, pulling his full account history, going back as far as our records allowed, which was about 10 years. Every single entry showed the same pattern, stretching back the entire decade, multiple pickups per week, always overnight, always that identical prescription, never any gap longer than a few days between visits, for 10 straight years, which struck me as strange for an entirely different reason. That's not how prescriptions work. There's no medical reason to refill a 30-day prescription every 2 or 3 days, and no insurance in the world would keep approving that pattern for a full decade without some kind of flag or review. I brought it to my supervisor's attention formally, expecting some kind of investigation, or at minimum a conversation with corporate compliance about a decade-long billing anomaly. What actually happened was stranger. The account, when reviewed by whoever handles that kind of audit at the corporate level, came back completely clean. No irregularities found, no excessive refill pattern flagged, as if on paper, in whatever system they used to review it, None of what I'd personally witnessed and personally pulled up myself had ever actually happened. The man kept coming in for the remaining months I worked that shift. Same routine, same polite confusion, same footage confirming visits that our system somehow always resolved into looking closely. I eventually stopped mentioning it to anyone, because every time I did, it seemed to slightly embarrass whoever I brought it up to, like I was pointing at something everyone quietly agreed not to look at directly. I left that position for an unrelated promotion about a year after I started, and I still don't know what that man's actual condition was, medical or otherwise, or why the system so consistently smoothed over a pattern that, every time I looked at it directly with my own eyes, made absolutely no sense at all. I do know that on my very last overnight shift there, he came in one final time, right around 2:30 in the morning. Same prescription, same polite insistence it was his first visit of the day, and as I handed him the bag, he looked at me, for the first time in over a year of these encounters, with something that wasn't confusion at all. It was recognition, like he knew exactly who I was, and exactly how many times he'd stood at that counter, and simply chose, every single time, not to say so. I worked the overnight shift at a parking garage attached to a downtown office tower for about a year, back when the building still had a decent number of overnight tenants, mostly a data company that ran a skeleton crew around the clock, and a cleaning service that came through in the early morning hours. My job was straightforward: sit in the booth near the exit, validate tickets for the handful of people who came and went overnight, and do an occasional walk through the garage's 5 levels with a flashlight, mostly to make sure nothing was broken or anyone wasn't stuck somewhere with car trouble. The garage had a strict system. Every vehicle that entered took a ticket with a timestamp, and every vehicle that exited had that ticket scanned, which logged the exit time and calculated whatever fee applied. It was a fully automated system for entry and exit gates, and my job was mostly just oversight, handling anyone whose ticket didn't scan properly or who'd lost it and needed manual verification. Level 3, the level I want to tell you about, had a specific quirk in the system that I didn't learn about until about 4 months into the job. I started noticing that certain nights, the system would log a vehicle entering on level 3 that never had a corresponding exit logged, even after days passed, even after I did a full, physical walkthrough of that level and found no unfamiliar car actually parked there. The entry log would show a ticket taken, a timestamp, everything normal, and then nothing. No car matching that entry ever physically present when I checked, and no exit ever scanned for that ticket number, which should have been impossible, because the system flagged unpaid or unresolved tickets automatically, and this one just sat there in the log, open, unresolved, for as long as I kept working there. I mentioned it to the facilities manager, a guy who'd worked in that building for a long time, expecting him to treat it as a simple system glitch worth reporting to whoever maintained the software. Instead, he asked me, very specifically, what level the entry had logged on. When I said level 3, he nodded slowly, like this confirmed something he already suspected, and told me that level 3 had a history, going back well before my time there, of logging what the staff privately called ghost entries, tickets taken with no vehicle ever actually parking, and no exit ever completing the loop. I asked him if he knew why. He told me, somewhat reluctantly, that years before I started, there had been an accident on level 3, a vehicle that went off the edge of the ramp during a moment of driver error, resulting in a fatality, and that ever since, staff had noticed occasional anomalies specifically tied to that level, ghost entries in the ticketing system being the most common, though he also mentioned, almost as an afterthought, that some overnight staff over the years had reported hearing a car engine idling somewhere on that level during their walkthroughs, with no vehicle ever actually found when they checked. I want to describe the night I heard it myself, because it stayed with me clearly ever since. I was doing my standard 3 a.m. walkthrough, level 3 specifically, flashlight in hand, and about halfway down the row I heard an engine, clearly, distinctly, the specific low idle of a car sitting in park, rather than driving, coming from somewhere ahead of me in the row. I could see the entire row from where I was standing, thanks to the overhead lighting, and there was no vehicle anywhere in it. Just empty parking spaces, clearly visible, and the unmistakable sound of an engine idling from somewhere among them. I stood there for a long moment, trying to figure out if the sound was somehow bleeding in from another level through the concrete, which garages can sometimes do in strange ways with sound, but the idle was too clean, too close to be coming from anywhere but that exact row. As I stood there, the sound cut off, abruptly, the way an engine does when someone turns the key, rather than the way it does when it naturally idles down, and immediately after, the ticketing system, which I could hear from my booth's radio linked to it for alerts, chimed with a new entry logged on level 3, time-stamped to the exact minute the sound had stopped. I went and checked the physical level immediately. No car, nothing, just the open, unresolved entry ticket sitting in the system, exactly like all the others before it, destined, as far as I ever learned, to never log a matching exit. I finished out my contract at that garage and didn't renew it, partly for unrelated reasons, but partly because I stopped being able to do my level 3 walkthroughs without a genuine sense of dread I couldn't fully explain to anyone who hadn't heard what I'd heard. The facilities manager told me, on one of my last nights, that as far as he knew, no one had ever actually seen a vehicle or a person connected to those ghost entries, only ever heard the engine, and that his personal theory, for whatever it was worth, was that whoever had died on that level was still, in whatever way something like that persists, trying to finish a parking loop they never got to complete, arriving over and over, never quite managing to leave. I don't know if that's true. I only know that somewhere in that garage's ticketing system, there's probably still a growing list of entries on level 3 with no matching exit, accumulating quietly, night after night, whether or not anyone's still there to hear the engine that creates them.